I definitely, this is always such, I wanted to do this roundtable because I feel like I have definitely been on both sides of this conversation, being mixed and being white presenting. It has definitely been a challenge in my career. And granted, I'm not, I'm sort of adjacent to the business. I'm not in the business anymore. So I feel like a lot has happened since I left the business that has opened up opportunities for people of color, which is fantastic. And there were times when I was like, oh, I left too early, like, oh, I could have gotten on that Hamilton train. Like that would have been really great, but it's weird because for my career, I'm Filipina, Chinese, Spanish, German, Welsh. I grew up in a predominantly Mexican neighborhood, thought I was Mexican up until I was 8 years old, grew up speaking Spanish. I'm Hispanic, but I'm not Latin. But for most of my career, I ended up playing Latin roles. And, at the time, it was okay because I was still a person of color. And there were a couple of times, when I would go in for casting and they would ask, they would say, are you Latina? Are you Mexican? I was actually down to the wire for the first production of the Selena musical. There was this production of this musical called Selena Forever that Chris Jackson's wife, Veronica Mahana Jackson, she ended up playing Selena. I understudied her in the second production of it, but it was down to the wire between she and I and another girl. And this was like ages ago when they were doing like a reality show type thing. They were filming us and filming the audition process. They flew us out to Miami. They had chosen these like 10 girls across the country. And on the last day of our sort of Selena boot camp, as we like to call it, they were interviewing us and they wanted to ask us about our background and, where we grew up and everything. And the casting director at the time said, they're really interested in you, so make sure that this is a good interview, and I was like, okay. So I go in and the first thing they asked me was, so tell us about your background, and I said, well, my mom's Filipina, Chinese, Spanish, and German, Welsh. I grew up in a predominantly Mexican neighborhood. And they went, wait, I'm sorry, you're not Mexican? And I was like, no. And I was never gonna lie. Like I've never been okay with lying about, who I am. I'm very proud of my background. But it was an issue. It was definitely an issue. And they told me it was an issue, that they really wanted not just a Latin girl, but they wanted a Mexican girl. And they actually gave Veronica issues about it as well, because she wasn't Mexican, she was Puerto Rican. And me more so because I wasn't Latina at all. They were just like, well, we can't have her. And, up until I said it, they were looking at me like, they were like, she's got the look, she's got the sound, she's got the moves, everything. So, on one side of the argument, I'm like, okay, it's frustrating because it's like, all I told you was who my parents were, and that's what changed your mind. It wasn't about anything that I did in the room that changed your mind. It was that audition, right? And that's what it came down to, and they let me know that. And that was the frustrating thing. And Veronica ended up being amazing. She was brilliant at it, but even she got, they talked to her and they said, hey, if we end up finding a Mexican-American girl, who can play this role, yeah, and I understand, wanting authenticity. Like I understand that, but on the other hand, it can be very frustrating for people who do look like me, because we sort of get hit on both sides, on both ends of the door, like hit coming in and hit going out. It's just like you can't win either way, because unless I sit and just start writing roles for myself, which I could have done. There aren't a whole lot of roles for half Filipino, Welsh and German and, Chinese girls. So to be that specific and nitpicky, I have seen that happen, and it has been frustrating. So it's slightly different, argument, but,
Can I say something about that? That is like so fascinating and such a real thing in general in this 2020 or in the last like 5 to 10 years or so, where the specific ethnicity is so, people get into these arguments about culture and specificity, when as an actor, your desire is to play a role, to perform a role. And you growing up in a Mexican neighborhood speaking Spanish, honestly, Lupita Nyong'o is Mexican. She was born in Mexico, okay? And her parents are from Kenya. But so whenever they write about her online, the Mexicans always write Mexican, Kenyan actress they want. They're like, we will claim her. But
we claim her, right?
She does not look stereotypical Mexican either. And similar, Jennifer Lopez is Puerto Rican and played Selena, and a lot of people were up in arms about it. I had a similar situation. I got to play Rita Marley in Marley, a play about Bob Marley. I got to play Rita Marley, his wife. And I am Black American, and my mom is Black American. My dad was from West Africa. I am not Jamaican. And there was a large cast full of Jamaican people and Jamaican Americans in the cast. And I worked really hard and passionately on my Jamaican accent. And there would always be people who would come after the show. They're so happy to meet me. And they're, oh my God, you are so good in the show. I'm so happy to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd be like, hey guys. And they'd be like, oh, you're not Jamaican? Like, oh, they were, they were done with me, But then there were people who were just so proud and so thrilled. And so, on one hand, I'm sorry that you experienced that you were perfect for the role, and that, and even that Chris's wife, there was this, but if you slip, if we find someone who fits this, to a T, well, like it's a tough thing. It's a similar thing. I had an audition for a gay woman role recently, and I was like, I don't know, should I audition for it? Because people want gay people to play gay roles. People want trans people to play trans roles. People, everything is so specific. But there was a time where acting, and still is, where we want to be like, oh, I want to learn German for this role, or oh, I want to speak Spanish for this role, or oh, I want to learn to play the viola for this role. One of my friends, she learned viola for The Secret Life of Bees. Like whatever you want to learn as an accent or a culture or whatever. As a human being, you feel excited to portray that role. But when it comes to ethnicity, there's so much that boxes us in that people, it's a tough fine line, especially as women of color, because you go all this time, every other role is blonde, blue eyes, or every other role is, it's very, very specific. Then you find something, you like, I literally fit the description. Like I could play Selena, and then it's like, physically you fit the description, but on paperwork you don't fit the description. It's like,
and then on the opposite side of that conversation, I went in for the revival of Flower Drum Song, and David Henry Hwang was behind the table. They called me in once, twice. I had a third call back. He closed the door and he was like, I am not supposed to ask this, but I'm going to ask this. Are you Asian? Yeah. And I was like, yes, I am. Like here's my mom, in Chinese and Filipina, my mom's Chinese and Filipina. Yes, I am. But at that time I was like, but if you're so concerned about the look of your cast, then I'm not what you're looking for, because I don't present as Asian. So why are you calling me back? And likewise, like, back in this would never happen now. And I don't think it should happen, but I got called in for Lion King multiple times, and now, now I'd be like, I don't feel comfortable.
In Lion King, there's a lot of Asian, there's people of color,
Asian tracks.
Latin, Asian, Black. There's a lot of mixture, and white. Lion King has a big mixture,
Yeah, and like I said, at the time when I was auditioning for Wicked, I was understudying Nikki Renee, in a role for a Creole woman, and the role I was playing a girl who was supposed to be mixed Black and white. And I remember coming into the cast and just being like, sorry, y'all, I'm not actually Black. And all the Black people in the show were like, it's not a problem. You look like a cousin of mine.
Right. They're like, you look like my cousin. Right.
You look like my cousin. Right. Yeah, and it's not a thing. It was not a thing at all. I teach middle school in Newark, and like all of my students who are all Black are always like, what are you anyway? Like everything, just everything, but it definitely caused like, it was a challenge when it, like you're saying, Saycon, like, you really just, you get into this because you want to be able to play a role and have it be about your ability. So I understand both sides of the conversation, but I've definitely, it's been a challenge on both sides of that conversation, where it's like you want to be seen as your skill, but you also understand the need for authenticity and for representation. And I agree. Like, I definitely think that people of color, we need to keep pushing for representation. We need more roles for people of color. And more opportunities for actors and performers of color, and writers and directors and producers of color. Like, more importantly, we need them in like the highest echelon of power in the arts.
That's what we need more of.
Have the most agency and create those opportunities for people of color, more importantly, so that we are not fighting each other this way, right? Like, we're not feeling like we're, it's like her or me, and like, well, I'm lighter or I'm darker, and that, that should be the thing that matters. Like, we shouldn't be fighting each other that way for a role. So
when you say you go into I go into auditions and I'd be like, oh, it's the brown girl day, because they'll be like Indian girl, Latin girl, Asian girl, black girl, Indian girl, Latin girl, Asian girl, black girl. And then, or you overlap a little bit and you'd be like, oh, they're looking for all the Caucasian girls right now, and I'm like the first of the black girls to come in. Or I come in and I'm here's your wild card. You know what I mean? And here's the black version. Y'all ready? Like there, it's such a thing where we get kind of lumped, I guess, as being minority in the country. We get all lumped all together because it's like, I don't know, they all brunette, bring them in. You know what I mean? It's kind of, somebody.
Yeah, I have a very similar experience to Maria, because I am the whitest Latina I've ever met in my entire life. And I've met a lot of them, but I'm just like, for some reason, I just came out really light, and the rest of my family was not as light as me. And I have blue eyes, and, the first time I ever really encountered any of that was when I was in college, my junior year of college. They announced that the main stage show at NYU was going to be in the Heights. And I was like, I really want to play Nina. I think this is a great part for me. And I auditioned, and I ended up getting the role. And after I got the role, there were petitions going around the school to remove me from the role because I was too white to be playing Nina Rosario. And they started calling it In the Whites and all of that, whatever. And I was like, but I'm Latina. I am the exact heritage that this character is. And in fact, one of Nina's biggest storylines, one of her biggest challenges within the show is the losing of Abuela and learning about Abuela's backstory of how Abuela fled from Cuba and how she came to the US. And that's the story of my grandparents. And so, opening night, getting to do that show and, catching my grandfather's eye in the audience, watching from backstage while our Abuela was singing Paciencia y Fe, and seeing him sort of tear up because that was his story, and that meant everything to me. But then to sort of, be walking the hallways in school, in an educational production, and to have people be like, you should be ashamed of yourself for accepting this role. How dare you whitewash this show? And I'm like, I can't change, what color my skin is. My ethnicity does fit this show. And this is a story that I'm proud to tell. It's a story of my family. But that was certainly just a very.
Did that shut them up? Did that shut them up when you said that?
I mean, not really, but again, it's, it was college kids, whatever. And I knew that, that I had a right to tell that story, and that I had a right to play that role, that, I really did go through my head, and I was like, what, I did work really hard for this. And I do feel like I'm really right for this. And I know that it brings so much joy to my family to see this kind of story be told. And I know that this is right. But even on the opposite end of the spectrum, I can't tell you how many times I walk into an audition room and, the person at the door will say Sarah Fernandez. And I walk in and they look relieved that I'm white. And it's gross. And I hate it because I'm like, I'm the same person that would have walked in no matter what name was on, you know, clearly you haven't seen my headshot, because they're like, Sarah Fernandez, oh, you know, and I just like, I can't tell you how many times that has happened, and that it just really, you know, like for me, that always rubbed me the wrong way. So, I mean, like, I definitely get what you're saying, Maria, about that sort of like here and there, because it's just sort of like, there is now such a precision on it. It's like, you know, like if you're not this percent Cuban the way this character was, then I'm sorry. You know, which doesn't make sense. And I think instead the conversation should more be like, we do want every color and every ethnicity and every story within our stages. I mean, I think for me, especially with Elphaba, it boggles my mind that there are so few of us, because the whole story rests on the fact that her skin is a different color from everybody else's. So why is it that, you know, like,
ding, ding, ding. That's why I never got it. I never understood that. Not to cut you off, but
no, but you're absolutely, it's the one, I mean, there's many things that don't make sense, but it's the one thing that's just like, it is so crystal clear, you know, like I mean, Elphaba is a person of color. Her color is green, and her whole identity hinges on the fact that people have made fun of her whole life because of that difference. And why are there so few people who have done that, you know? I mean, and I think more than anything, it's, you know, the people that can relate to that do actually bring a sense of vulnerability and fire to that role, because it's understood, you know, there's a feeling inside your bones of what Elphaba has gone through, but it's
having been other and othered. Yeah.
And sure. You know, it just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't know a lot of things, but that one is the one thing that I'm always like, I just make it make sense, you know? But yeah, I mean, it's a crazy weird thing that we all go through, but I mean, it's also nice to have roundtables like this. It's nice to have community. It's nice to talk about it. I think the positive silver lining in all of it is that there is conversation, that there is, you know, that people are hoping to move forward, because that's what we need. That's what we've needed for a long time. So, you know, that's my 2 cents.
Hi, everyone. I want to say really quick, I need to hop off for a second and hop into another video for a moment. If you all are still here, I'll come back, but I'll just say good night for now.
Thanks for joining us.
good night, Saycon. Good to see you.
Bye, Saycon.
See ya.